Pikmin are absolutely iconic. And you know what else is iconic? The fact that Miyamoto said that Pikmin 4 was very close to completion about 8 years before it actually released. Or what about that cryptic hint he gave in 2014 saying that the game was already in development for the Wii U? What's the truth behind all of these confusing interviews? Why does the game have such a heavy focus on Don Dory? And what's up with that scrapped Bean Pikmin? Well, in this episode of Beta64, we're gonna get to all those questions as we discuss the development of Pikmin 4.
Hey everybody, Andrew here. I know that it's past my bedtime, but I just could not sleep without first telling you all about the Beta64 Patreon. It's the best place that you can go to support the show. Every Friday on Patreon, I upload new exclusive content for members that you can only find there. Discover lost media from Beta64's past. What about behind-the-scenes info on how videos get made? Or monthly Q&As answering your burning questions. Plus an exclusive podcast and cozy Let's Plays too. But what if you want even more? Well, let me introduce you to the next two membership tiers, the Gold Edition and the Player's Choice, which give you the ability to get your name etched on the end cards of future Beta64 episodes. Join hundreds of Beta64 fans over on Patreon, support the future of the show, and you get hundreds of exclusive posts to binge. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching Beta64, and thank you for considering joining the Patreon. Now, let's get back to the development of Pikmin 4.
Development of Pikmin 4 started all the way back around 2013, after the previous game, Pikmin 3, finished development. That's around 10 years of development time. What on earth caused it to take so long to make? Well, at this point, it was just a small team at Nintendo working on the new game. And honestly, it could hardly be called a game back then. The team was spending their time creating and testing various experiments in order to discover what direction to take the next game in the main series. Because things started around 2013, this means that Pikmin 4 was more than likely being developed for the Wii U at first. Even though the Switch was technically being worked on as early as 2012, it wasn't until late 2013 that the concept was finalized and the system itself could even start its own development process. So what were those experiments trying to figure out then? Well, back in those days, the team was mostly just trying to figure out whether to make Pikmin 4 more like the first game or the second one, since there was a big split in the fan base on whether or not you were a Pikmin 1 person or a Pikmin 2 person. Being a Pikmin 1 person means that you prefer the time management gameplay direction of the first game, where you get 30 in-game days to collect enough ship parts to escape the planet. Now, if you're a Pikmin 2 person, that means you prefer the type management style of the second game, where your goal is to try to figure out which types of Pikmin would be best to use while traversing large cave systems. Picking between these two styles of gameplay was tough, and they had a similar situation during the early development of Pikmin 3. Back then, that development team felt they should return to the gameplay style of the first game, and that's why they brought back the day system. But even then, after Pikmin 3 was released, there were now people saying that they preferred Pikmin 2. Those early Pikmin games had accidentally split the fan base, so for Pikmin 4, the goal was to bring it all back together, combining parts of Pikmin 1's time management gameplay with Pikmin 2's type management style. That combination created something beautiful, a new focus for gameplay called Don Dory. So what exactly is Don Dory? Well, Nintendo themselves translates it like this: to think about planning and efficiency in advance to get things done smoothly. In Pikmin terms, Don Dory is all about trying to tackle challenges efficiently, utilizing optimal Pikmin types within a time limit. Basically, it's a mixture of Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2 style gameplay. But funnily enough, this Don Dory style didn't start with Pikmin 4, it could first be found in Pikmin 3. Now, I said before that Pikmin 3 was designed after Pikmin 1, not this Don Dory style, and that is true for the story mode. Pikmin 3 also introduced a new mode that you could play, Mission Mode, and this was true Don Dory style gaming. It was added to Pikmin 3 as sort of a pseudo-tutorial to train players to play the game more efficiently. It was then that the team started describing this gameplay style as Dandori, but once again, it was only in mission mode. But with Pikmin 4, things were going to be different. Yuji Kondo, long-standing programmer of the Pikmin series and now chief director of this new game, decided that they were going to bridge the gap between the first and second game by bringing the Dandori gameplay from the mission mode of Pikmin 3 into the main story of Pikmin 4. As I said though, at this point, it was only a small team experimenting with how to bring Dandori to the main stage. There were points that they could see the game taking shape, but they couldn't bring it into full development because of other, more pressing projects. But that did not stop Miyamoto from talking about the future of Pikmin anyway. After all, the series was starting to gain more attention in the media, with Pikmin 3 getting great reviews, and not to mention the Pikmin short movies, which released in 2014. It seemed like Pikmin was getting its well-deserved time in the spotlight, so naturally, a lot of people wanted to know, when's the next game? And on November 6, 2014, during a semi-annual financial results briefing Q&A session, Miyamoto announced just that. Kinda. See, while talking about the newly released Pikmin short movies, he gave a cryptic message about the future of Pikmin. He said, and I quote, "Continually launching campaigns after the release of software will lay the groundwork for the next iteration of Pikmin in the future. And needless to say, we want it to be one of the motivations for potential consumers to purchase a Wii U. We are making a variety of different efforts." In other words, those short films and other campaigns like the Pikmin 3 demo were here to help get more gamers involved with the series and lay the groundwork for the next Pikmin. He also hoped that these efforts would motivate people to buy a Wii U too, since sales were not the best. Now you'll notice Miyamoto never actually said the words Pikmin 4, but people immediately assumed that he had just revealed that Pikmin 4 was in development for the Wii U. And they weren't wrong, but as I said before, it was more of an experimentation phase than full-blown development of a sequel. But that was during a financial results briefing with a lot of corporate mumbo-jumbo. If only we could get a look behind the scenes and know Miyamoto's real thoughts. We need a more personal interview with him. And thankfully, just 2 months later, we got one with Smosh Games on January 5th, 2015. There he was asked about the Pikmin shorts and if he had any more plans for Pikmin in the future, to which he replied that he had many ideas, but nothing had been decided on yet. He also added that a new Pikmin game would eventually be released, and all of that was true. But while many people on the outside figured that Pikmin 4 was well into development at this point, the actual team was still trying to find a way to support their new Dandori style gameplay. As I said before, the team was trying to give Pikmin 4 the best from Pikmin 1 and 2, but they weren't going to stop there. They wanted to add in some new supporting features in order to give the game more depth than ever before. And their plan was to make the story mode longer than all the previous entries in the series. And Kondo had the perfect idea on how to do just that. In his first concept document for this new Pikmin game, he told the team that their secret to success would be to, quote, eliminate the barriers between modes, end quote. By blending the story mode with Pikmin 3's mission mode and versus mode, which first appeared in Pikmin 2, not only would this make the story mode much longer, but it would also help teach the player how to find the fun of Dandori without asking them to do tutorials in a separate mode. To really drive the point home that these additions were all for the sake of Dandori, they renamed mission mode to Dandori Challenge, and the versus mode was now called Dandori Battle. And since this was being added into the single-player story mode, for the first time, you could now play these battles in single-player against a CPU. Which is great, because I never, ever found anyone to play Pikmin 2's battle mode with back in the day. I mean, I wasn't alone. It was tough finding anyone else who was into the Pikmin games back then, and the developers were well aware of the series' low sales. But why are the sales of the game so low? This is an iconic series, and yet so many people have not played the game. Pikmin 4's team felt that one major reason for the lack of sales was that the games were perceived as being too hard, which was something that always confused Miyamoto. He didn't think the game was that challenging, but that being said, he decided to give it some thought. And he figured out that there were probably two big reasons why people were hesitant to picking up the game. First, the controls. They were too confusing. Having to swap between Pikmin on the fly in fast-paced battles, aiming and throwing them in very specific places to defeat enemies was just too much for some people. Make one small mistake and your Pikmin are eaten alive. It was just too much pressure. The second reason he figured was the game's open-ended nature. There isn't just one way to play, and that depth can be overwhelming to some people. What should I do? Where should I go? Am I making a mistake? Am I going to have enough time? So, for Pikmin 4, Miyamoto spent a great deal of time trying to figure out how to make this game seem less difficult and feel more interesting, and Kondo did the same thing too. He and his team made a priority to make the game easier to play, starting with the controls. That's why locking onto enemies is automatic in Pikmin 4, while it was optional in Pikmin 3 and didn't even exist in earlier games. It was all to make the experience more intuitive to pick up and play, even for people that aren't used to playing these games. This was all happening during Pikmin 4's early development stages. But thanks to a little misunderstanding, that's not what the public thought was going on behind the scenes. In July 2015, Miyamoto talked with Eurogamer in a now infamous interview that wasn't made public until a couple months later on September 7th. This is the interview where Miyamoto is quoted saying that Pikmin 4 was very close to completion years before it actually released. Except, he didn't actually say that. Yeah, Miyamoto never actually said that Pikmin 4 was close to completion. Here's the real quote. "It's actually very close to completion. Pikmin teams are always working on the next one." He didn't say Pikmin 4, he said it. So what is it? Well, Eurogamer thought it was Pikmin 4, but based on the second half of the quote, Miyamoto was most likely referring to the next Pikmin game, which would end up being Hey Pikmin. But how on earth was the interviewer supposed to know that the next game after Pikmin 3 wasn't going to be Pikmin 4? Eurogamer even attempted to confirm this information by reaching out to Nintendo directly, where they were told that, and I quote, "Pikmin 4 is in development," which is true, but we can't be certain that's what Miyamoto was referring to in the original interview. Perhaps it was all just a mix of assumptions and misunderstandings. But even if it was just a misunderstanding, now everyone was excited for Pikmin 4 and thought it was very close to being done. Surely an announcement was going to be soon, right? Well, not quite. It wasn't until E3 2016 that Miyamoto talked about the next Pikmin game, this time to Game Rant. In that quote, he says that Nintendo was indeed working on Pikmin 4, but that it wasn't a priority for the company at the moment. But here's the thing. Notice those square brackets around Pikmin 4? Game Rant put those in, not me, which means that he didn't actually say Pikmin 4 in the interview. If I had to make an educated guess, it was more likely that he said the next Pikmin game, which Game Rant also assumed was going to be Pikmin 4. Again, Miyamoto could have been referring to Hey Pikmin in this interview too. The first time we can say for sure, with absolute clarity, that Miyamoto was talking about Pikmin 4 was not until E3 2017. And the only reason we know that for sure is because Hey Pikmin had already been announced and was releasing the following month in July. So, what did Miyamoto tell Eurogamer about Pikmin 4? Well, not much at all. He just said that development was still progressing at the time. After all the weirdness surrounding these interviews, Nintendo's PR team had just told him to stop talking about Pikmin 4, and he certainly did. He didn't say a word about it for the next 5 years. And within that silence, bred doubt. People assumed that the game was silently canceled, and at this point was nothing more than vaporware. But it wasn't. Far from it. Inside Nintendo, the team was still busy trying to figure out how to make new players try out Pikmin 4 to make the series a bigger mainstream success. But they were also well aware that they couldn't change too much or else it would betray the expectations of longtime fans. So, instead of changing the fundamentals of the game, they decided to add in new features instead to help support new players. One of those supporting features was a new character, Oatchi, the lovable space pup. The development team was able to solve a number of issues that newcomers and longtime fans have had with the series by adding in this new furry friend. See, Oatchi's usefulness can change depending on how you want to play the game. If you're a newcomer that needs help fighting a particularly tough creature, Oatchi is there to help. But if you're someone who wants to challenge themselves with a little extra Dandori action, Oatchi can be split off from the party to do other tasks while you handle your business with the Pikmin. Now, the team was a bit worried that Oatchi would end up making the game's battles too easy. In fact, they were constantly making adjustments to the game's balance because of his addition. But since how you use Oatchi is up to the player, they still felt it was a good idea to add the puppy in. Though originally, he wasn't going to be a dog at all. As I mentioned since the beginning, they were focused on bringing new players into the series, so the team wanted to have an interesting selling point that would surprise the player. That's why instead of controlling a sweet pup like Oatchi, you are going to command a Bulborb, the natural enemy of Pikmin. You would have been in complete control, and even had the ability to command the Bulborb to eat Pikmin. From a gameplay perspective, it sounded super interesting, and from a marketing perspective, yeah, that would definitely get people's attention. They were even considering taking it a step further by having the player control a bunch of different creatures. But as you could probably guess, the idea of controlling both the Pikmin and their enemies, it didn't really mesh very well, and it became too difficult to pursue. Oatchi ended up being a much better fit, seeing as he is a friend to all Pikmin. You can tell the team was doing everything that they could to make this game more welcoming to newcomers, while also trying to give the gameplay more depth for the series' biggest fans, all in an attempt to make this series a mainstay in Nintendo's lineup. And another way they were going to try to do that was with the new and improved Rewind feature. Now, you could technically rewind in earlier games. If something went terribly wrong, you can just mash the reset button on your GameCube and it's as if the day never even happened. Pikmin 3 even added in this day reset option as a feature without having to power cycle your console. But that being said, what if your last save was over 10 minutes ago? Well, that one mistake means you've got to play those 10 minutes all over again. But with Pikmin 4, if you made a mistake in battle, you were able to rewind just before the encounter with no more wasted time. The dev team hoped that this additional feature would make new players feel more at ease and not worry quite as much about accidentally demolishing all of their Pikmin. But as with all the other new supporting features, this too was added in for longtime fans of the series as well. Players aiming for the best times could now easily try out different planes of attack, one after another, to see which one ended up being the most optimal. It's not cheating, it's an optional tool for newcomers and hardcore players alike to bring players of all skill levels together with Pikmin. But it wasn't all about changing up the gameplay. The team decided also to overhaul Pikmin 4's visuals, with the goal being to make Pikmin feel more realistic. They wanted the player to feel like Pikmin could really exist in the real world and give them a sense of just how small these little guys are by placing them next to familiar objects and environments. But it wasn't just the addition of more real-world objects and locations, they also changed the way that the game's camera works. In previous entries of the series, you were limited to a restricted camera that was mostly top-down. But in Pikmin 4, you are now able to move it with way more freedom, almost all the way to the ground. So that way you can see the world from the perspective of the Pikmin themselves. But why did they go to all that trouble? Well, after releasing 3 mainline games in the series, longtime Pikmin developers realized that they were losing that sense of smallness. They noticed that they were starting to design environments less for the atmosphere of being a small creature in a big world, and instead, things were being designed more for the gameplay. As a consequence, these little creatures were beginning to fit in way too well with the size of the world. So that's why this time with Pikmin 4, the team was intensely focused on making the Pikmin feel smaller than before. with Miyamoto keeping a close eye on that. He would be shown a prototype of the game, look at it, and remark that something just didn't feel right. They didn't feel small enough. It wasn't until the team showed a prototype build with Pikmin walking underneath a familiar wooden pallet with the camera going underneath with them that it finally felt like things were getting small enough. Everything that they had done before with that new camera and more real-world set pieces had finally added up to getting that feeling of just how small Pikmin really are. And here's something fun for you. This information came from Nintendo's official Ask the Developer interview. And to showcase what they meant by that wooden pallet, they included footage of Pikmin under a wooden pallet. But here's the thing, this is actually footage of an unused test room that was made by the devs to test various objects. Here you can see a caution cone and hammer placed on multiple types of terrain like grass and dirt. And then for a brief second, we can also see a place for testing reflective surfaces using floating orbs. Plus there's some foliage, and in the distance, you can also barely make out one of each type of Pikmin standing in a row. And speaking of these little guys, with the camera getting closer than ever before to the Pikmin, Mitsuhiro Kida, the game's sound director, thought it was finally time to add in something special. Something that the series had been lacking since the very beginning, the sound of Pikmin footsteps. It was thanks to this change and all the other additions we talked about before that you could feel closer to Pikmin than ever before. Plus, with all those bonus gameplay elements for newcomers and experienced fans alike, this new game truly felt like the next big step for the Pikmin series. And now it was finally time, after all these years, to show it off to the public. On September 13th, 2022, it finally happened. After close to a decade of development and 5 years of total silence on the topic, Miyamoto was finally able to introduce Pikmin 4 in a Nintendo Direct. And look how happy he is to do so.
Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about Pikmin.
It was here that we got to see the game's visuals for the first time. And believe it or not, even though this footage was shown off almost a year before release, there are little to no changes to see. It's simply the title screen's background visuals from the final game and a single screenshot. But that was enough to get people very excited. Now let's fast forward a few months to the February 8th, 2023 Nintendo Direct. There we were treated to actual gameplay of Pikmin 4. Plus, we were introduced to both Oatchi as well as the new Ice Pikmin, which were a particular favorite during playtesting among less experienced players. Now, unlike the last Direct, there are a couple changes that we can look at here. Kinda. See, at various points in this trailer, there are some important characters that were removed from the footage. Like at the beginning, Oatchi can't be seen near this plant like you can see him in the final game. But here's the thing, later on in the trailer when it reveals Oatchi, the cutscene shows him in the exact same place as the final game. So it's not like they moved him to a different location. My theory is that they removed him from the beginning of the trailer just to give him a bigger reveal later on in the video. And I believe a similar thing happens later on too, when you get to see your character plucking their first ever red Pikmin. Normally you'd be alongside Colin and Shepard, but not so in this early footage. They are revealed later in the Direct, which again makes me think that they were simply removed from this part of the trailer to give their reveal later on more impact. And speaking of impact, the trailer ends with our first look at Night Expeditions, but we wouldn't see more of it until Pikmin 4's final Nintendo Direct before release. It aired on June 21st and showed off Glow Pikmin for the first time. This was another additional Pikmin type that was meant to help newcomers. After all, these Pikmin live forever, so don't worry, there are no consequences. Throw them around to your heart's content. In addition to this new Pikmin reveal, we also got to see those Don Dory sections, as well as the opening of the game where you collect the Game Boy Advance SP. In the final game, this whole sequence of it teetering on the edge before dropping down and popping open was something that Miyamoto poured a lot of thought and effort into as he worked on it. Something as simple as that was made with a lot of care, and I think that's part of what makes Pikmin 4 feel so special to play. Pikmin 4 finally released worldwide on July 21st, 2023, and has since become the best-selling game in the series. So, That's the end of the game's development, but I say we take a look at what's inside the files of Pikmin 4 to find out what's unused. What secrets do you hold? Let's take a look. We're going to start by listening to unused music in the game's files, or more like unused variations of existing tracks. And what better way to start than with an alternate version of the iconic title screen song. It starts off the same, but right after that, the notes sound completely different. And here's the final version. Speaking of sounding different, do you remember the introduction music for Red Pikmin? Well, left over in the final game is an unused version of the song that's very wobbly. We don't know what its purpose was exactly. Maybe a placeholder for one of the new types of Pikmin found in the game? Or maybe a scrapped Pikmin type? But that's all just speculation. The next unused file is audio related too, but this time with visuals, because it's actually a pre-rendered video. It's called MOV_sound test, and as you can guess, it was meant for testing sounds. But here's the thing, it's mostly just a ticking sound, over and over for the entire video. But don't worry, there is one other sound that plays 47 seconds in. But what is that sound? Well, it kinda sounds like an onion sprouting its legs. Are those legs? And that's it for that unused video. But what was it meant for though? Well, if you look at the timer, you can see that the ticking is actually a metronome, keeping time with a special tick sound playing every second. I'd say it's reasonable to think that this video was used to help with timing sounds rather than testing the sounds itself. Now let's move on to another unused video file that actually has some pretty substantial visuals. It's called MOV_OP02, and it's one of the opening movies, specifically the one that shows you heading down to the planet to save everyone. Except, this unused version is lacking a lot of the visual effects that the final game has. And another big difference is that this early version is obviously pre-rendered. The retail build of the game creates this cutscene on the fly using in-game assets, so that way your custom colored ship is actually reflected in the visuals. Because this early version is just a video file, it's stuck using this beige color instead. Oh, and speaking of color, Pikmin 4 has a lot of unused colors in various parts of the game. For instance, in the character creator, there used to be a white and gray hair option. And those same colors are unused in the suit color picker too, which means you could have originally had a white and gray suit too. But let me tell you, there is a lot more to see than just alternate colors for your player character. There's actually another unused color in a different part of the game that tells a much bigger story about an unused Pikmin known as the Bean Pikmin. Now, let's set expectations right. A model of this scrap Pikmin is nowhere to be found in the game's files. We only have some small clues here and there that show it existed at some point. The first of which is an unused color for pellets. As you know, these pellets are representative of a specific Pikmin's color, and this neon green one is listed in the file DT_pellet color as bean. It never appears in normal gameplay. But that is not all. The file T_UI_icon_radar_L_000_no_mipmap_D contains a bunch of icons for various onions and other important objects. And what's that over there? Yeah, that's an unused green onion, the same color as the unused bean colored pellets. So what on earth is a Bean Pikmin? Unfortunately, at this point, we don't know. But based on the neon green color, there's a very good chance that this Bean Pikmin is somehow related to the final game's Glow Pikmin. Did the Bean Pikmin get scrapped and the Glow Pikmin just stole their color? Or is it possible that the Bean Pikmin just evolved over the game's development and eventually became the Glow Pikmin? As of right now, it's all just a mystery. But even if the Glow Pikmin and Bean Pikmin were one and the same, you still would not see these pellets and onions in the final game, since Glow Pikmin can only appear in caves and night expeditions. It appears that this green color for these objects was always destined to be scrapped in the end. And that's the development of Pikmin 4. So did the team finally unite the Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2 people? Did they successfully bring Pikmin 4 into the limelight and get the general gaming public on board with the series? It's kinda hard to judge. But what I can say is that it's clear the team did their very best to make the best Pikmin game that they could. They took everything they learned from the past and tried to make something new that would bring everyone together. Together with Pikmin! And of course, their new pal, Oatchi. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're interested in more behind the scenes info on your favorite Nintendo Switch games, you gotta check out my video on the development of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. The link is on the screen right now, as well as a link to the Patreon, where you can get new exclusive videos every week and even get your name on future end cards too. Bye.